Welcome to Future Media Explains, where I take a few minutes to break down a big story that will blow your mind. Today, a shock handshake between Google and Epic Games that's going to change App Store fees worldwide and rewrite the way that Android works for 3 billion people. Let's go. For more than 5 years, I've been following one of the biggest legal brawls in tech. Epic Games, the maker of hit game Fortnite, squaring off against Google, the giant behind Android. And just when we all thought we were settling in for years of appeals, boom, it's suddenly over. But not in the way that anyone expected. It's turned into something completely different. So here is what's just happened. This wasn't a surrender, not by a long shot. Instead, these two giants, these bitter rivals, have done something kind of wild. They've called a truce so they can co-author the new rules of the road for the entire Android ecosystem. So what exactly is in this surprise peace treaty? That's what I'm digging into now. So I've read the court papers, and what they've actually done is they filed a joint motion with the court announcing a huge settlement that they've done themselves. And get this, they're not arguing about the old rules anymore. They're designing a completely brand new framework together. And it's got a terrible working title so far. It's called the Modified Injunction. But let's listen to the language they're using here. It's pretty incredible. They're framing this as a win for everyone, to put their disputes aside and to make the platform better for the 3 billion people worldwide that rely on Android in the App Store. I mean, talk about a massive shift in tone, right? These guys have spent tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars fighting it out in court in a battle royale that's gone on forever. Now they've gone from a vicious courtroom attack to sounding like they're co-founding a new startup. To get why this is really happening, you've got to understand something called the existing injunction. You see, after Epic won its big case in December 2023, the court basically handed down a set of rules. The problem is that Google and Epic immediately started bickering about what those rules actually meant and how to put them in place. It was very messy, and I covered this. But this new settlement is a way of them saying, okay, let's just scrap that confusing court order and create a new plan that we can both actually agree on. All right. So that's great, but what's actually in this new plan? What's changing? That's what's coming next. Well, the first big one goes right to the heart of the whole trial, making it way easier for other app stores, like the Epic Game Store, to get on your Android phone without having to go through Google's Play Store. And then when you look at the details, this new approach is just like completely different from the court's original idea. The court's plan was only temporary. It lasted 3 years and it was only for the US. This new deal lasts all the way until 2032. And because it actually changes the Android operating system itself, the effects are basically global. And that's huge. And instead of forcing Google to list its competitors in its own store, which was frankly always pretty awkward, this creates a totally new system for installing app stores and payment stores right from the web. Yeah, this new low friction flow, this is really the core of the whole thing. It's as if the consumer has finally been put at the forefront of doing a deal. Remember, a huge part of Epic's argument at the trial was that Google used all these scary looking warning screens to freak people out if they tried to install an app from outside the Play Store. You've probably seen them, they were everywhere. But this new system, at least for these approved registered app stores, gets rid of all of that. It's all replaced by just one single neutral looking permission screen. And it's designed to be super simple. You find it, you approve it, you install it, job done. But what's really important to note here is that this new install process doesn't just wipe the slate clean. A lot of the key antitrust protections from the original court orders are still in place. So Google is still banned from doing things like paying off phone makers to block competition or forcing developers to keep their apps exclusively on the App Store. That all goes, but the service itself becomes much more consumer friendly. Okay, so that's the app stores. Now for the other half of the deal, and this is the big one, payments. I mean, this is the issue that kicked off the whole war in the first place, right? Google's rule that developers had to use its billing system and to pay a service fee for that on everything. And that service fee, well, frankly, at 30%, it was far higher than any other service fee for any similar service anywhere. Ergo, going to court and Google being found to be an illegal monopoly in app stores. But under this new settlement, developers get a ton of new freedom. They can offer their own payment system right alongside Google's. And here is the crucial part. They can actually encourage you to use their system instead by charging far less. And they'll be able to show you both prices side by side, Google's on this side and yours here, that might be less right in the app. So just stop and think about what that means for 1 second. Before now, a developer wasn't even allowed to hint that you could get a better deal on their own website. That was forbidden by Google. Now they can put that choice and that price comparison right in the face of 3 billion consumers inside Google's App Store. That's a level of direct price competition that we've simply never ever seen in any huge app ecosystem until now. So naturally, this leads to the billion-dollar question for developers. If they use their own payment system, do they still owe Google a cut? I mean, that fee, that 30%, that's become known as the Google tax. That's what this entire fight has been about for years. And here's the answer. Well, it's not completely gone, no. Google's argument has always been that it deserves to be paid for the platform and the services that the Play Store provides, such as making sure there's no dodgy software in anything and that it's appropriate for the market. But, and this is a massive win for Epic, the settlement puts a hard ceiling on how much Google can charge when a developer uses its own billing. So how much is it? I'm about to tell you. So the first cap is 20% for certain types of transactions, and that's the absolute max Google can take from now on. And that sounds a bit bad, but wait, because there's a lot more coming. For developers, this is a ton less than the 30% before, and it creates a level of predictability and financial certainty that just wasn't there before this decision. But then, for other types of transaction, that cap is much lower, down to just 9%. By actually sitting down and negotiating these specific numbers, Google and Epic have avoided what would have been another years-long, seemingly endless, messy court battle over what a reasonable fee even is. But what falls into the 9% and the 20% categories is still being decided, and there are a few more steps ahead. But note this. The App Store is a $46 billion business for Google. So these changes are a massive concession and a giant win for Epic Games and for all of the people that publish content, including publishers, for subscriptions and everything else on the App Store. It's also a really big win for Epic Games combative CEO, Tim Sweeney. All right, so this sounds like a done deal, right? Well, honestly, not quite. Nearly, but not quite. Epic and Google are on the same page, but they have to get the judge to agree to sign off on it. And there are a couple of hurdles ahead of that. The first thing is that there's a court hearing on December the 11th where the judge will review this new proposal. But there's also a second really critical condition. You see, Google is also settling a series of cases just like this with a bunch of US states. And this new deal with Epic will only hold up if the judges agree to the changes that Epic and Google are now together suggesting. And there's one other thing here. The judge in the antitrust trial was called James Donato, and he is no friend of Google. He absolutely grilled and criticized the search giant at the trial for deleting millions of instant messages that he wanted as evidence. That is still heading to trial, so there's still going to be a trial for that. That all means that it's still a little bit complicated, but the question really is, will Donato get in the way of a mediated settlement that achieves the goal of reducing fees and increasing competition in the Google App Store? It kind of feels kind of unlikely, but he's pretty angry about this deleted evidence. Okay, so have we got peace in our time? Well, when you step back, what this settlement really is about creating a final lasting peace. It ends a 5-year war. It gets both sides out of fighting over how to implement the rules, and it creates a clear and stable playbook for the Android world that will last for almost a decade, and that was unthinkable when this trial began. So for both of them, it's really about one thing, really. It's about certainty. And this all leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? For years, the entire narrative, and I might be being optimistic here, and I'm often told that that's true, but the whole narrative for years now has been that regulators and competitors are dragging big tech into court, kicking and screaming and fighting and legislating and lawyers arguing. But here we have two of the biggest adversaries ever sitting down together and literally writing their own regulations. So, could this be a new playbook? Is this how we tame big tech now, through a negotiated peace settlement instead of an endless war? It's a huge question, but this is the first time this has happened, so I think we need to watch it extremely closely. Thanks for listening. This has been Future Media Explains. I hope you found it useful, and please subscribe at the end.